Let me go ahead and share my screen. Feel free to ask any questions as we go along. I'm also going to share these documents with everybody that is either here now or was signed up for the registration later. So let's dive in. The first thing that I want to go through today is the combating content decay training. This is part of my SEO Bridge Builders training. It is my guide on how I update content. I originally made it for people that I was mentoring one-on-one, and then they found it really useful. So I made it a product that I turn around to people, and I'll be sending this out to anybody who registered for the call. We're going to go through this piece by piece, and then we'll get into some actual hands-on training. But what is content decay? That's a term I'm going to be using a lot. I'm guessing a lot of people already know, but it basically means that over time, your content starts to decay and just lose organic traffic. So when you publish a new piece of content, the lifespan is usually nothing for a little while. And then after a few weeks, it does really, really well. And then suddenly after 6 months or maybe a year, it just steadily starts to decline in traffic. That's content decay, and it happens to the best content out there. Why does it happen? There's a number of different reasons why. Freshness is a huge factor when it comes to SEO, and that means the date that is on your content plays a factor in how well it performs. So articles that are older just are not going to perform as well, especially if you've got competitors who are in the same domain area as you. So if there are people competing for the same keywords, as we know, SEO gets more and more competitive as time goes on. So with people competing for more keywords and more powerful domains, you're going to get pushed off the front page or whatever page you're on. You're also going to find that articles will come along that do a better job of covering a topic than you did in your original. That's not to say you didn't do a good job, but a lot of people might look at the article you wrote and then decide, oh, they didn't cover this, or they don't have a video, or whatever. And diversity is one of the factors, again, that can make your content perform well. And then also, we all know that backlinks are really part of SEO. That's when an external website with a lot of power and influence links to your website. That's a good thing. Those links sometimes break. They sometimes get removed. Articles disappear. Websites go down. And if you lose backlinks and somebody else with more backlinks is coming onto the scene for the same keywords or the same content topic, you're going to fall off the first page. So as you can see, it's just natural. It's just the way of the world in SEO that your content will naturally decline over time. So what you do to combat that is you update content. And I do this for 100% of my clients. I also recommend anybody who is doing a content strategy or an SEO strategy, this should be part of it. So there's lots and lots of ways to do this. I'm going to show you a bunch of them today. But one of the things that's most important is having somebody who's in charge of your content schedule. So you can't be doing this kind of thing if you aren't aware of how old your content is, how long its shelf life is. You need to be monitoring these kinds of things. And then you're able to track what is and is not performing. I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. But when we update content, so a lot of people think, well, if it's just the date, can I just change the date and update the content? Google's smarter than that. They know that people were doing that for a while. They punish those people for doing that. So no, you actually have to improve the article. So you have to change around 50% of what's in the article now has to be fresh. Maybe you add a lot of content, or you rewrite half the article, or maybe you add 30% more to it. It's up to you, but you need to add more content or rewrite content. You do need to change the date when you publish it. So that's the number one mistake a lot of people make. They put all this hard work into updating a piece of content, and then they don't update the date. And so they don't get any benefit from it because Google still thinks it's an old piece of content. So you do have to update the date. And if dates aren't visible on your content right now, especially like blogs and stuff, it doesn't have to be on landing pages, but on like blogs and stuff, if the date's not visible now, go make it visible because it's very important. And then, yeah, feel free to, I know more people are streaming in. We're just going through the content decay program, which I'm going to pass out later. The fourth rule when you're updating content is you just cannot change the URL. So if you change the URL, you're basically creating a new piece of content. That is not what we want to do. Your URL has value. The older the URL is, the more powerful it is. It's kind of the opposite of content. Fresh content on an old URL, that's the beauty that we're aiming for. So do not change the URL when you're updating content. Keep the same URL. You're just updating the content. And I skipped a rule here, which is you're always focusing on making the article more valuable to the reader. You are not just adding fluff to update it. If you can't think of anything to add to it, then I don't know what to tell you. You got to be more creative or you got to let it go. But either way, you're not just adding crap. You can just ask ChatGPT to write a bunch of stuff and then move on. Okay, so we are going to go into in a minute here how to identify which topic pieces we should be choosing for upgrading. But I want to just keep going through this a little bit more here. These are the questions that I have in my head after I've identified a piece of content I know I want to update it. These are the questions that I'm asking myself as I'm reviewing this piece of content. So first big question is like, how can I go deeper? And this is when I like to look at my competitors, who's on the first page now for the keywords that I want to rank for. What are they covering that I have not covered? And what can I cover that they are not covering? That is what I'm looking for. The next big one, and sometimes this is like a really nice thing because it makes it really easy, is just updating the content to be more relevant. So for example, this sounds super boring, but I've been writing a bunch of articles about doing taxes as a freelancer for one of my clients. We're updating some articles that are a couple of years old. Tax thresholds have changed. The dates that taxes are due have changed. Some of the rules and the laws around taxes have changed. When that happens, it's a really good opportunity to give your article a lot of new, fresh life. So, something else you can be thinking about, if you're writing an article for a SaaS brand, for example, you might want to ask yourself, what can I add to this? Do I mention AI in this article at all? Was this written before ChatGPT came out and now I can mention AI? Or has the company done something new and exciting that is relevant? Or have we written new related content that can be added to it? So ways to make the content more relevant. The next thing is what assets can you add to make it more valuable? So this is something I'm really pushing people to do, especially in the modern age where SEO is just one of the many ways that you should be getting attention to your content. Adding something like a video, a playlist, integrating social posts into an article, adding a checklist, adding something downloadable. All of that counts as refreshing content and it actually adds some serious value. And I'm in a huge creativity push right now. If you're reading my newsletter, you probably hear me talking about creativity all the time. There's a reason for that. First of all, it makes me happy. And second of all, it's really actually the best way to make your content stand out. And so when you are doing content upgrading, I love doing content upgrading because it's a practice of creativity. You have to think about what are the most creative ways that I can make this article fresh and new and stand out. And definitely adding assets to it is one of the best ways to do that. Same thing here with adding content diversity, photographs, playlists, graphics, videos, anything that you can think of to add. Or if you already have those things in there, change them out. So I have an article, I think I'm ranking #1 for the term how to be funny and not funny. Maybe I'm not #1 anymore, but we updated the article not long ago. It has like tons of videos from TV shows and TikToks and comedians, giving examples of how to be funny. I refreshed it a few weeks ago and just took a lot of the old ones out and replaced them with new comedians that I like recently, right? So that's one way to do it. And then just a question to have in mind is that you need to think about how you're going to promote the content when you're done, because every time you refresh something, it should go back into your marketing machine. So however you market your new content, like if you write a new article and it goes into your newsletter and it goes on LinkedIn and it goes on Instagram, do the same thing. People who read it before will be happy to see that you've updated it, but probably most people didn't see it the last time. So it's definitely worth promoting again. Angela asked, curious to hear you speak on why it's important to update 50% of an article. So that was for those who have joined late, just talking here about one of the golden rules for updating content. You must change at least 50% of the article's current content. So I sound like I'm a school marm and telling you that that is like the hard and fast rule. It's not exactly 100%. It doesn't have to be 50% every time. That rule is there basically to tell people that you can't just add a paragraph and call it good. You need to change a significant amount of the article. Now, if you change 40% instead of 50%, are you going to be okay? Yes. But if you are consistently only adding 10% or only changing a few sentences and then you're re-uploading the content with a new date, Google's going to catch on to that and it's not going to reward you at all. When you change the date to your content, which is a big part of updating content, that is like you're sending up a little flare gun to Google saying, hey, this article's new and come check it out. Google's going to come and read the whole article. And if it reads that you've only added a paragraph at the very end and then you change the date, you're going to be in trouble. If it can tell that, oh, this person has changed a significant amount of content, there's new information here, and it's bots are smart enough to do that, then it won't punish you. It will actually say, oh, great, they're the kind of people who are refreshing content. That means they're content producers that I can trust, and I'm going to promote them more. Does that answer your question? Another question. Okay, thanks, Angela. How does Google weight adding other formats like images, downloads, etc., towards this update? So that's a really good question, Tamar, and I'm not sure, to be honest. Google hasn't told me or anyone that I know of. So right now, Google with images, Google can't read an image. So it can see an image and it can read the alt text of an image, but it can't really tell you what that image is. Now, I don't know if that's true for Search GPT, the new search function that's come out from ChatGPT. If you're subscribed to my mailing list, you will be hearing me talk a lot about that. But I would imagine that a new image is sort of like a tick box of like, yes, they're doing this in the right way. If you add a new button and a new downloadable, that's like adding a new link, and it's like adding a new image. Is that enough to be enough for a brand new update? No. But is it part of the whole when you're updating a piece of content? Yes. So maybe you only added 30% new content, but you also added a downloadable form and you added 2 more images and you put a little video at the bottom. That's enough, right? That's more than 50% if you look at the article holistically. This is one of the things where I know like people would love it if I was like, well, count the words and divide them by X and then you'll know what. No, that's not how it works. It is a gut feeling. Look at the article and tell yourself, did I actually make this better? And is it significantly different than the previous version? If the answer is yes, then you're good. If the answer is no, I probably need to change more. Okay, just going to move. So as I mentioned, you're all going to get a copy of this document. And like I said, this is usually only for people who are in my SEO Bridge Builders course, but I'm giving it away to all of you who are kind enough to join me on this call. The next section here is actually a step-by-step that you're going to be able to keep that will show you exactly what I'm going to show you live. So we will actually just be doing these live, but later on, you will be able to come into this document when I send it to you with the email and go through these when I'm not on the call so that you can follow the same steps that we're going to do live here. But let's just keep going a little bit more with some of the what are we looking for when we're updating a piece of content. So as I mentioned, when I'm looking at what I want to do to my piece of content, I often look at competitors to see what they're doing and see if I can do better. This right here is a checklist that you can kind of have in your mind when you're looking at competitor articles. So first of all, first thing I check, was it published more recently? If they're outranking me because their article was published more recently than me, then upgrading mine is going to give me an advantage. If their article is older than mine and it's outranking me, it means they have a more powerful website or the content is better. If they have a more powerful website, there's not much we can do about it. But if the content is better, then we can upgrade our content. Are there subtopics that they've covered that you haven't? Great question to ask. Check out the word count difference. So just copy and paste the words into word count tracker or to Google document. Google counts words. Google likes long form content. We know for a fact that content that is over 1,400 words performs better, and content that's over 3,000 words performs even better than a lot of the other content on the web. And that is still true in 2024 and probably 2025 as well. So if you are like, hey, why am I suddenly off the first page? And then you look at everybody on the first page and they're all in the 3,000, 4,000 word category and you're at 1,500, bingo, there's your answer. You just need to add 2,000 or 3,000 valuable words to your content. Do they have images, graphics, quotes, or videos that you don't have? And then you might also want to just check and see how powerful their domain is, because that's a good reason. Like I said, it might just be that they're more powerful than you, and that's why they're outranking you. In which case, it might mean that you don't need to update your content, just that you need to accept your place in the hierarchy until you have more backlinks. And same thing here. How many backlinks does it go? And then again, just a really quick checklist for you. This is something I recommend that you have on hand as you're updating content, or maybe after you're done, just go through it. But can I make the headline more interesting or engaging? Do I need to add an intro explaining the update? So that's a really good idea, and it's a great signal for Google sometimes to say, this Google was updated in the wake of the 2024 election to cover XYZ. Or we updated this article in 2025 with the most up-to-date statistics. right? Or something like that. If you feel it's necessary, you can add something like that at the top of the article, counts as fresh content. Google will read it and see that you're doing things like that. Just make sure you still update the date. Keywords. We're going to talk a lot about keywords today. When you're doing upgrading, you definitely want to first look and see what it was ranking for, that it's lost rankings for, and also think about new keywords that you can add. Somebody sent me an email. I think they're probably going to watch the replay of this, asking me, how do you decide which keywords to value? We're going to get into all of that in a minute here. But yes, definitely keywords will be on the mind when we're doing this. Internal links is another huge thing. And this is another reason I really recommend that people have somebody whose full-time job is looking over their content, whether that's you, and for me, it's me in my business, but for a lot of my clients, it's also me or somebody else. But somebody who is got a little bit of a library of content in their head, because adding internal links to fresh content. So if you haven't touched an article in 2 years, odds are you've written quite a bit of content since then. So you should be able to add new internal links to fresher content, and that is really good for SEO. Did you add alt text to the images you uploaded? Do you need to update the meta description? Another great way to send a signal to Google that the article has been updated. Did you update the publish date, as we talked about? That's extremely important. You have to change the date of the article being published. And then also, did you maintain the same URL as the old article? Really key. So I'm going to send that document out to all of you, but it's a lot easier to understand what I'm talking about when I just show you. So I have a few things open right now that I'm going to jump into. If you want to follow along with this, whether you're watching live right now in the room or whether you're following along later, I would recommend now making sure that you have Google Analytics open. I would make sure that you have Google Search Console open. Today, I'm going to be using SEMrush, which is my personal SEO tool of choice. Ahrefs works just as well for pretty much everything I'm going to do. I'm not going to be able to display it for you, though, because I no longer pay for Ahrefs. I now pay for SEMrush. Not because I don't like Ahrefs, it's just a personal thing. Okay, so let's say I'm working on a client's content calendar, and I know I've got to look and see what's falling out of favor, because every month, for all of my clients, we update 1 or 2 articles pretty much every single time. Oh, sorry, I've got some messages here and I didn't see. Yes, that is a mistake, Angela. So Angela's asked a great question. She asks, many of my clients have articles with titles like how to do email marketing in 2024. They don't update the article every year. So if they're just going through the article and changing the word 2024 to 2025, that's okay. It's not going to make a difference, period. It might make a little difference, but it's not going to make a difference. My question is, are they also updating the date of the article, the date that it was published when they're doing that? If so, I would not be doing that. So no, I would not do that, because that is what Google has told us not to do. So you really can't change the date of the article itself unless, like I said, you've added a significant amount of content. And I would also say, it's a little bit disingenuous for the reader, right? Because you're not actually doing anything for 2025 if you do that. You're just gaming the system a little bit, right? Instead, you should be actually adding value. What's coming down the pipeline for email marketing in 2025? You can definitely think of stuff to come up with, right? There's changes on the horizon that are going to impact email marketing in 2025. That should be integrated into the article. And maybe you take some stuff out, maybe you add some new images, maybe some new stats, and you're done. Great idea to update it, but don't just change the year. Okay, realizing that I've got to update content. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and investigate who is, as I like to say, hemorrhaging traffic. So what content pieces of my own or my clients have been losing traffic? That is what we want to find out. So I'm going to take you guys on a self-shaming tour of one of my side businesses. It's called Invisible Ink Editing. Yes, I am a fiction editor. If you don't know that, that's another thing that I do. So I read novels and I clean them up because I am a nerd. And I have a severely neglected website because it is kind of a hobby for me. That being said, I have decided to make it less of a hobby and more of an income stream. So I thought this would be the perfect time for me to look at some of my content that I know is old and outdated and see if I can't figure out what needs to change. So I have logged into my GA4 here. First thing I like to do when I get in here, actually, let's just go home so I can show you from the very start what it would look like. Please don't laugh at the very small numbers in this account. Okay, so when you are here, maybe this is what yours looks like, or maybe it looks a little bit different, but you just want to go over here to reports. And it will pull up something like this. Now, the first thing I like to do is choose a date length. I find it really depends on how old your website is. This is a website, oh gosh, probably a decade old. My God. And, I usually like to look within a year. Sometimes if we're producing a lot of content that's really new, I'll do 6 months, a shorter amount of time. Sometimes I'll even do like 90 days. Or it also might depend, like if your business, like for some of my clients that deal with taxes, like I was talking about before, I will compare like tax season on tax season rather than like 6 months to the 6 months previous. So it's really going to depend on your website. Play around. I'm going to go with a year. So I'm going to look at the last year of content, and that's what I'm choosing to look at. And then the next thing I like to do is up here, we have it tracking all users right now. I'm really only interested in organic traffic for this experiment. And the reason is because this is an SEO exercise, and SEO is focused on organic traffic. So all you have to do here is just hit add comparison, and then take all users off and hit organic traffic. Okay, now we're looking at only organic traffic. The numbers shall get more shameful. Yes, they do. Wow. Okay, so now we are looking at the organic traffic for the last 12 months. Now, the next thing I want to go over to is over here in this, I'm going to go to landing pages. And this is going to allow me to look at pages on the individual level to see who is doing what. So here we have all of my content. You can see a lot of my blogs are in here. And what I'm going to do is go up here to the dates, and I'm going to go down here to where it says compare. And I'm going to click compare, and I'm going to have it compare to the previous year. You can choose, oh, actually, this is preceding period. I'm going to do preceding period last year, match day of week. And I'm going to hit apply. And I'm going to wait for the magic to happen. And now, once it's done, so good news is, actually, organic traffic for my site somehow, despite me doing almost nothing, has gone up. Love that for me. But right off the bat, I see that one thing that has happened is that this blog, which is about how to master showing versus telling, has gone down by 21%. So this is how you find these blogs. You go in here. Oops, sorry, we should be looking at organic traffic, not all users. Sometimes it takes itself off. We love that about this platform. It's such a cool feature. You just make sure that it's orange. But we see it's still gone down 21%. So once you have the comparison on and you're looking at landing pages and you're looking at only organic traffic, you are now going to go down through the list and look for negative numbers in this position or any of these positions. So actually this blog, I have no idea why it's doing pretty well. Yay. But there's certainly this blog is a problem. So I'm like, all right, this blog has lost 21%. I know for a fact, I haven't touched this blog in years. I'm going to make this my one of the month. If you're going through this list and you don't see anything, like there's no negatives at all, shorten the time span. Go down to 6 months instead of 12 months, or 3 months instead of, and see if anything shows up that way. If you do that and there's still nothing, congratulations. You don't have any content that's decaying, no problem. But I would just take a list and start at the top. The ones that have lost the most traffic organically, those are the ones that you want to target first. The ones that are lower down, put them down later. And you need to be doing this exercise probably once a month, because you're going to see over time that different articles start to lose traffic at different times. So it is a never-ending job. Good news for those of you who are freelancers, this is a great way to keep yourself in business because people are consistently needing your help to revive content pieces. So that is one way that I like to go and define and find them. There's a couple other ways too that you can check this out. So another one is to go into Google Search Console. And so here's what your Google Search Console might look like. And if you go into performance, This tracks things like the number of impressions and everything. Right now, we're looking at the last 3 months. So the first thing I'm going to do is extend this to 12 months. And I'm going to add these in here just because I like to see my average click-through rate, my average position. And you might want to look at mobile if that's more, oh, sorry. Yeah, you can't really, can you? Never mind. Forget that. But what you want to do here is under date, you want to hit compare. And you want to do, actually, yeah. So you can do any one of these. Might want to start your own date to do like a 12-month on 12-month. For the reasons of simplicity, I'm just going to do 3-month year over year. Just give me a 3-month look year over year at these numbers. And look, if you're into SEO like me and you're a nerd, or if you run your own website and your own business, Google Search Console is a really useful tool, and not enough people understand how it works. I spend a lot of time in here. It is like looking under the hood, right? So if you want to know how your website's working, how it's not working, there's so much information in Google Search Console, and it's free. Okay, so now what we see here is that if we scroll down here, we can see some information about the search stuff that's happening on my site. And what you'll see is there's this column here called click difference. There's also an impression difference column. And this first one is showing me certain keywords that have lost. So here, look at that. Showing versus telling. Actually, it looks like it's been doing fine. Got 0 in the last month. That's not, yeah, I lost 84. But anyway, actually even easier than looking at, I mean, this is interesting just because you can see what people are searching to come to your content. But more interesting, if you look at pages, look at this. Wow, my blog about hyphens and dashes has lost popularity. So 30 some fewer people have clicked on that. That's not good. It's got 16,000 fewer impressions. Not good. Here's another one, filter words, 37 fewer clicks. What do you know? All of my content. So this is why I recommend checking both, right? Because if we had just looked in Google Analytics, you would have been like, oh, these articles are all doing fine. But if you change the numbers, if you look in a different tool, if you look in a different platform, different things reveal themselves to you. And actually, what I have discovered here is that a lot of my content is losing clicks. And actually, what does not surprise me is that the blog that I already called out as problematic, the one about showing versus telling, has by far lost the most clicks and the most impressions. So once again, it is still at the top of my list. So those are 2 of the tools. The third tool I use is Google. I use SEMrush as well. So again, you can use Ahrefs to do all of this stuff. It's just going to be a different process. I apologize, I can't show you because I don't use Ahrefs anymore. But I'm just going to put my website in here, and it's going to pull up everything about my website and, shame on display. But here we go. Shows me my keywords, shows me traffic in general. These are keyword losses. As you can see, I actually have been losing keywords. And what I really like is it gives you some position changes to look at as well. So you can see down here, it doesn't give you a huge amount to go off of. And especially a website like mine that doesn't have very many keywords, Jane, but it will show you here like, hey, you lost this keyword, the correct use of hyphens. You used to rank for that, and now you don't. I lost large hyphen, went down by 3. I have a whole article on the difference between further and farther. So, this is another place where you can look. You should be tracking this when things are dropping in massive numbers like this. And in SEMrush, you can use what's called position tracking. So every time I write an article, I add it into the position tracker, and then I get alerts in my email that say, hey, this article or this group of keywords has dropped 50 points in the last few days. And I get that email every day for all of my clients. So I'm automatically alerted when a bunch of keywords drop off the first page. And that just is another little red flag for me that the article probably needs some love and attention. So another great place to look is here on SEMrush or Ahrefs or whatever tool it is that you prefer to use. All right, so when they have like the cooking shows and people are like, oh wait, maybe, oh good. When they have the cooking shows and they're like, then you put it in the oven for 2 hours and then here it is. I did that. So when I find out that I have an article that I want to update, here's the article on my blog. Now, first thing I've just got to reduce the size of these. This is a total tangent right now, but I hate when I can say this because it's my own freaking website. This is way too big. Can you see how big this is? It just takes up so much space and it probably takes forever to load, slowing down my website. If this was my client, I'd be mad, and it's me. So the first note I'm going to make to myself when I'm updating this article is to reduce the size of the image. And then I go through the article and I literally just copy it into a different document. So I have it here. And when I upload it into the document, I just make sure I go through and make sure all the subheaders are, tagged as they are in the article. I make sure that the links that are in the article are copied over. The images are usually copied over as well. And then I leave some space up here at the top for a few different things: the page title, the meta description, and the keywords used. So we're going to fill these out first. The reason I left these blank, first of all, if you're upgrading content, updating the meta description is always a really good idea, and just to give it some freshness. And if you have decided to target a different keyword, you might want to change your page title. If your page title already contains your favorite keyword for the article, leave the page title. One thing I wanted to show you all, though, is, and I swear nobody's telling me to do anything today. Isn't that sad? But this is like my favorite plugin. It's called SEO Meta in one click. And when you click on it, it pulls up all the metadata for any page that you're on. So you can just easily copy the page title. And let's go ahead and get the old meta description. It also tells you whether it's too long or too short. These will turn red if it's too long or too short. So I love that for me. Okay, and then, want to learn how to master your showing versus telling in your writing. This guy will help you understand the issue and take it head on. Okay, so I've got those. I'm going to rewrite that. Now we're actually going to start upgrading the article. So first thing I do is read it. And usually I do that while I'm uploading it. So as I'm cutting and pasting and going through and making sure it's all formatted correctly in the document, I'm also reading it. And I'm reading it non-objectively, right? I'm not even really thinking about what I want to change yet. I haven't touched this article. Here comes the deepest moment of shame since 2019. So I don't remember what I wrote and I needed a refresher. So you should just be reading it first. It's great because I wrote it, but there's certainly room for improvement. So as I'm reading through, usually by the time I'm at the bottom of it, I've got a few ideas going in my head about what I want to do with this article, how I want to change it. I'll put notes in as I go. So I might say, I want to add something here. I might leave a little note for myself. But mostly I'm just trying to read it through and figure out what can and cannot be added. Now, back in the olden days, before ChatGPT or anything like that existed, I would then just update it. So I would just start writing, this is what I want to add, doing research to figure out what's out of date and what's not. Now we have our lovely robot AI assistants who can be helpful and can be hurtful. But I find with upgrading content, it's actually one of my favorite uses of AI. And I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to pull up Claude. I know probably a lot of people use ChatGPT. I use Claude. I prefer Claude's writing style. I think Claude is a better creator, in my opinion. Yes, Angela's with me on that. Love that. So I use Claude. I pay for Claude. And one of the reasons I pay for Claude, and again, nobody's paying me to tell you this is truly just how I feel. Claude has this thing called projects. It also is similar. I think there's like ChatGPT has custom instructions, and it allows you to create projects for your different clients and different things that you're doing. So I'm going to actually create a project for Invisible Ink editing, content upgrading. And then the next thing I'm going to do is tell it what I'm trying to achieve. And you have to remember that at this point, Claude has no idea who I am or what I'm doing or what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm going to say, I am upgrading and refreshing old content on a website designed for fiction editors. There are many old blogs that are out of date and need to be updated with new information and fresh content so that ultimately I can re-upload them for SEO gains. And then we hit create project. And then the next thing I like to do is hit these set custom instructions, because this is where I can tell Claude, you are an SEO and content marketing specialist, but you are here to help me upgrade my content. You will help me brainstorm ways to upgrade content, research new information, and eventually craft the content itself. However, you will wait for my go ahead when writing content. You will always do your best to match the tone, style, sentence length, sentence structure, and paragraph length. Let me read this to you again. You are an SEO and content marketing specialist, and you are here to help me upgrade my content. You will help me brainstorm ways to upgrade content and research new information and eventually craft the content itself. So that's just the basics, right, of what we're going to be doing and what angle I want Claude to have. Now, I write this in everything because my number one complaint about AI is that it will write for me unless I tell it not to. It will just, if I say, hey, I want to update this article, it will just write the article. And first of all, I get the ick from that because I'm the writer, not you. And I don't like it when it writes stuff for me without my input first. And second of all, it's just annoying. So I always say you'll wait for my go ahead when writing content, and you'll always do your best. And then you'll notice that I didn't just say to match the tone and style, because Claude does not have a good understanding of what tone and style is. It thinks when it says tone and style, it says, I'm going to use the exact same words that you use again. We don't want it to just regurgitate our words and phrases. We want it to use our tone and style. And that is why I go into detail about things like sentence length, sentence structure, and paragraph length. So that last part is also very key because I don't want it going off on other people's websites and using their content. I want it to use my tone of voice, my style. If you don't pay for Claude, you cannot do this, but you can do it at the top of the chat. So it's a bit annoying because it won't be applied. Like now I can, every time I want to work on upgrading a piece of content for invisible ink editing, I don't have to say all this again. Claude just knows. I just open up the project and we go. But if I didn't pay for this and I had to do it manually, then I would just probably copy and paste this into a document somewhere. And I would just, at the start of every chat that I wanted to do this in, I would just cut and paste it, and then I would go from there. I'm lazy. It's worth it for me to pay $20 a month, especially because I use it for so much. Okay, there. Now, normally the next thing I would do, and I normally do this for my clients, is I would upload like 10 or 15 articles, examples. Maybe there are articles that I've written that I have in Word documents, and I would just upload the Word documents here. Maybe if I didn't have Word documents, I would literally just copy paste articles from the internet into here or screenshot them. But I like to do that because those are then examples that Claude will work off of. I'm not going to do that today because I didn't. But instead, I'm going to do this. So today we're going to work on this article here. I'm going to hit File, download this as a Word document. We'll go back to Claude. And I'm just going to look in my downloads real quick and see if I got that. Yep, upgrade, how to master showing versus telling. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this in here. So that's literally the Word document of the article. And I'm always polite. Hey, Claude. Today we're going to work on upgrading this article. Now, first thing I always do when I'm using Claude is I give it a brain dump. So Claude will come up with its own ideas, and they're usually not as good as the ones that I come up with. My clients are paying me for my ideas, not for me to regurgitate Claude's ideas. So while Claude may come up with some ideas in a moment that I will use, the first thing I want to make sure we do is that we go with my ideas first. So I will always say, hey, Claude, we're going to upgrade this article. I already have some ideas of what we could potentially do. First, I think there is a section. I'm going to just point out to y'all on this article a couple things. So I have this here coming soon, showing versus telling worksheets. So that I actually made a bunch of worksheets that people can download and use in order to improve their ability to show rather than tell in their novels. Funny thing is, I said it was coming soon in 2019, and here we are 6 years later. So that's a lie. So the first thing I'm going to say to Claude is there's a section on templates that I want to upload. However, I think much of the content from this section should be moved toward the end and put into a new section about practical ways to improve your showing versus telling. Then we can expand on what I already have and leave the top section as a much shorter sequence. That's the first thing I know I want to do in this. A couple other things I know for a fact that I want to do. So I've got down here why too much telling is bad for readers. And I've got a section about how it murders suspense, how it puts up a wall, how it's just plain boring. Now, to me, that seems kind of short. I could probably think of a couple more reasons why showing versus telling is a bad reading experience, right? But I'm feeling lazy today and I don't want to think of them. So I'm just going to say, second, there is a section on why showing versus telling is bad for readers. I suspect we could probably add 2 or 3 more subsections there. And I'd like you to recommend a few ideas for what we could add. And then I will then probably say down here, there's a whole other section about how to spot showing and versus telling. And I want to add another section there as well. I actually think there's probably some stuff to answer to add here. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to say to Claude, similarly, I think we could add at least one more. Low system resources may affect your audio quality. Shut up. I think we could add, can people hear me? I just want to check the chat. I will say, I got one more section about how to spot showing versus telling. And then I always like to say, maybe you can suggest other things we might do to breathe some fresh life into this bad boy. And let's see what old Claude has to say. Goodness, Claude, just tell me the article sucks. Jeez, Louise. Okay, so here's what Claude has to say. Restructuring the worksheet section. Moving the detailed worksheet section content to the end, keeping a brief CTA. This would create better flow and put actionable content where it belongs. Okay, yeah, you agree with me. Of course you do. I'm the human. Expanding why showing versus telling you. Yeah, so then here, exactly what I want Claude to do. It came up with a few suggestions. Telling read distances readers from characters. Yeah, that's true. Telling weakens emotional impact. That one I don't like because I pretty much already have said that one. And do I have anything on pacing? Let's see. Yeah, I don't. Oh, I have this section on murdering suspense. So I'm gonna say no to that, but that's 2. So I'm gonna say yes to 2 of those. Okay, what else does Claude have to say? Common dialogue tags. Pretty sure I already covered that, but I haven't talked about emotional words. I haven't talked about expedition dumps. And I love when Claude does this. I was actually thinking about that earlier today. I was like, I'm actually editing a novel for a client right now. It's their second book, and they have a lot of exposition. That's a lot of telling in the second book because they're trying to catch readers up in the first book. So I want to add, actually, I'm going to add a whole section about that. I'm not even going to put it here. I'm going to put it in a different section. I'm going to be put in a special section about exposition. And then what else do we have? Common misconceptions section. That's an interesting idea. Yes, sometimes telling is appropriate. I agree. We're going to add that too. Great idea, Claude. Before now, no, I'm not doing that. Troubleshooting guide, fuck that. Enhance the movie theater scenario. No, people love that. Add a section on showing versus telling. I mean, those are great ideas, but I actually think we have enough to go on here. So let's start upgrading. Oh, you know what we forgot to do? We forgot to get our keywords. Let's go get our keywords. So I like to list my keywords here and actually like to do this before I send it to Claude because I like Claude to be thinking of the keywords. We'll just tell him. So keywords, how are we going to find out what we want? Well, first we're going to take the URL and we're going to go to our old trusty tool here. For me, it's SEMrush. For you, it might be Ahrefs or something different. And we put in, if you're using SEMrush, you put in the URL here, and then you actually want to hit this little thing and go to exact. So now we're just looking at just this article. I'm going to hit overview here. And right here are the top keywords. Now I know for a fact this article used to be on the first page for a lot of keywords. And I bet it's not on any now. Yeah, so look, here we are. So I like to arrange it by volume. You know, these are small time keywords, but that's okay. So showing versus telling, we are now position 19. We used to be number 1. So that is my primary keyword. I'll put it right here. Showing versus telling, how to show and not tell in writing. else? Show versus tell, showing versus telling. I'm not doing a great job, but blah, blah, blah. Add the keywords. Another thing I like to do then is I just like to in addition to that, I like to just do keyword research on the article. So I'll just type in showing versus telling. And I'll just see, has anything changed since I've written? Are there new keywords that I'm not aware of that I forgot to put in here? Or I might, like, if I knew for a fact that there was some new concept or new law or new event that was relevant, I might add that in. I might write like showing versus telling 2025 or write something like that, something to give the tool a little bit of relevance. So here we have showing versus telling. And if you click on that, first of all, here I have the articles that are currently on the first page. We're going to pull some of these open, see what these people are doing that I'm not doing. And the other thing that we're going to do is click here and click view all keywords. Telling versus showing. As old as mine and not as good. Apologies to you, Angela. I'm sure you're an excellent writer, but this is way shorter than mine. And it's as old as mine. Why is this outranking me? Now, see, this is when it pays to be competitive person. Because now I'm like, wait, it's probably got more backlinks, or maybe her website's more powerful. Good for her. Love that for her. Sorry that I'm going to knock you off the first page. And then AutoCrit. Now, this is a huge website. Does not surprise me that they are ahead of me. However, again, my article's way longer and way better and way more in depth. And I don't see a date here. All right, who's ready to get really nerdy? If you are looking at an article and you're like, I don't see the date and I want to know when this was published, there's a sneaky little trick that you can do. We'll try it right now. So when you're on the page, you hit on, I don't know what it is on a Mac, but on a PC, you hit Control U, and it brings up all this scary code of the website. And then you can hit Control F and type date. Are you kidding me? Aha. So they updated it in 2013. They wrote it in 2013 on the last day of the year. Isn't that interesting? Somebody had a boring New Year's Eve. But look at this. They updated it in June of 2024. That's why they're on the first page. Sneaky. Okay. So anyway, I'm just looking at these to be like, hey, speaking of which, these people have an exception to the rule. And to me, that's something I don't have. I don't have an exception to the rule. So I definitely want to add that. All right, so we've got some really good ideas now about how we're going to make this article better. Claude is on the same page as us. Everything's looking good. So first thing I'm going to do is just say, hey, Claude, just FYI, forgot to give you the keywords. But here they are. I'm just going to have Claude help me with all of this. I don't always do it this way. Sometimes this is like often where I'll stop with Claude and I'll just say, okay, I got the ideas. I'm a writer. I can probably do this as fast, if not faster than Claude, but sometimes I'm lazy or I'm busy or I just have a good feeling that Claude can actually help me. And I do want him to continue. So in this case, I'm going to ask him to continue. And I always recommend that you make Claude go step by step. Do not let him just do all the updates at once. The much better process is do one section, insert it in the article, edit it, show Claude the edits, and then say something like, please use my edits to draft the next section. Teach them as you go. Okay, so there's the keywords, Claude, and then I'm going to say, can you help me rewrite that first CTA and create the new section that will come later in the article? See if Claude's smart enough to get my vague instruction. Claude loves bullet points. Oh my God, Claude, no, stop. We have to tell him to stop doing what he's doing. But first, let's have a look at what he did. This is sometimes why I write it myself, because the whole process of getting to do what I wanted to do is like really crazy. I'll send you the rest of this. Angela, we're just gonna, people, like I said, feel free to come and go. Maybe you're working along as I'm doing this. I'm gonna be sending this out anyway, so I'm just gonna keep going here for the next half hour. But if you need to hop off, that's fine. What I'm saying here is that we can. So it's too many bullet points for me, Claude. I'm so sorry. But I actually really like this. Want to put these content in practice? We created comprehensive instead of worksheets to help you master. Maybe that's just my sign up for our newsletter, get these worksheets delivered straight to your inbox. So we're going to go in here, and then I really like, you can do this in Word, but I like to do it here in Google Docs, is just go into suggesting. And this is really important for when you're upgrading content, because when you're suggesting, it means that the changes will show up. So if you're sending this to a client, they'll easily be able to see where you've implemented changes. Or if you're doing it for yourself, it's also very easy to see where changes have been implemented. So make sure you have suggesting on before you make your edits. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take this out and Control S this bad boy in here. It's got bad spacing. Let's have a look. And then in here. Just a reminder to myself to add a form for signing up for our newsletter. And let's go ahead and put these. I'll do this later. I prefer emojis, but we'll do that for now. Okay, so we've got that section now. I don't like what Claude has done here for this next part. I'm saying, I like your suggestions. But first of all, we don't need this whole section on the worksheets for mastering, showing versus telling. I'm just going to tell him, I don't need the stuff about the worksheets. That will be in the CTA. Instead, and then I'm going to say, I like your practical ways, but it's too many bullet points. And I want to make sure we leave some of the practical exercises for the worksheets. Instead, these should be more general practices, such as working on sensory details, writing deep descriptions of objects and setting, and reading examples, and underlining / taking notes on what makes for good showing versus style. Can you rewrite that section, please? Perfect. So normally I would spend quite a bit of time reading this over, editing it so that it didn't sound too robotic, so that it sounded more like me. But we've got some really good bones here. And so you can see by giving ChatGPT like some pretty specific instructions about what I want and what I expect, it does a really nice job. And because it's already working on something that I've shared with it, it's already working on my writing. It's already working based on my tone and style. We're in a really good place to just go ahead and pop this in here. And then, we've got to make sure, whoops, we're going to have to rewrite this too. And then we'll go through here and just make sure that these are all H3s as they should be. And like I said, when I'm off this call, I would be going through these and rewriting them. Not rewriting them probably, but just injecting myself into them, because I can already see there's stuff in here that does sound like me and there's stuff that doesn't sound like me. And my clients are smart enough to know what I sound like. And I have spent a lot of time with my clients perfecting their tone of voice and their style. And so I would never, ever send them some unedited AI. What do I look like? But I would use Claude in this way to help me just sort of speed things up. So I've got some pretty good stuff here. I'm going to go ahead and just imagine that we went through with the other ones here. So I was going to have him rewrite the conclusion, and I was going to have him do another section on, let's do one more section. So I would say, okay, now I'd like to add a section on when showing versus telling is okay. We can talk about it being used for exposition, particularly when catching characters on information that has already been shared, or catching up readers on information from a previous book. We can also talk about how it can be minimized to increase pacing, and anything else you think might be worth adding to that section. And now watch this. I'm going to say, can you please also recommend where in the article this would fit best? And please keep subheaders and bullet points to a minimum. So he said there, why too much telling is bad for reading? That's where I probably would have added it. Too many. And then he says, let's just read this. Well, mastering the art of showing versus telling is crucial. Now, look, when I'm reading AI, if I see the word crucial, we're in trouble, because look, I'm not saying you can't use the word crucial anymore. It's a crucial word. However, AI loves it, and it will probably put it in the first sentence. And it's a big red flag to me. And if I'm catching it, my clients are catching it. So right off the bat, I know I'm right now first. Yeah, it loves to do this. Look, it always says it's crucial, and then it says the key is. Now, look, I advocate using AI for your content creation, but you need to be aware that there are certain phrases that AI uses, and if you don't edit them out, you are going to look bad in front of your clients. Make sure you don't include Claude's dialogue in there when you're copying and pasting it. Now, again, just want to say, I would never, ever do this. I would never just copy and paste it into my article, but I'm actually put it here. Okay. But imagine I loved it. So next thing I do is I click somewhere into the article that I did not edit, because that will show me a really good way for me to tell whether or not I've done enough to update this article. So as I'm scrolling through, I want to look at how much green am I seeing here? Am I seeing a lot of green? And it, is about half the article green? If about half of the article is green, then yeah, it's good to be updated, And it's getting pretty close. I would probably add one or two more sections, or maybe I would rewrite a section just to give it a little bit more. But it's looking to me like, about half of it, the content is new. So it would be time to upgrade this. And that is really, really simple. All you do is you log into your backend, wherever that is, and you find the article. Again, we want to use the same URL. So we're not creating a new article. We're finding the article as it exists already. We will then go through the article and edit it and it's really easy to do that because we can now see exactly where our edits were. And then after that, we will republish it with the date. So we just change the date to today or whatever the day is that you're uploading it, and you'll hit publish. One thing that you definitely don't want to do is you don't want to schedule the update to go live. I had a client that did this, and it actually ended up making a duplicate of the content rather than just updating it. So it really needs to be like change the date and hit publish and walk away, and then it will go live. So that is how this works. What I would recommend then doing is, if there's more step maybe, and that is to go ahead and just follow the article and make sure that it's actually improved and become better. So you want to look at it on Google Analytics in about 2 weeks, I would say, wait a week or two, and then you should actually pretty quickly see it improving. Almost every time I've done this for a client, we see it within a month. You see the content start to reverse. So you want to check on it on Google Analytics, make sure that's happening. Check on it in SEMrush and see if it's got new keywords or if its keywords have improved. That's all a good indication that it has. You also want to check in Google Search Console and just make sure that it's being crawled. That is something that you can check pretty easily. It should already have been crawled if you're updating it. So ideally, you just want to see the last time it was crawled. So when you look at the article in Google Search Console, you can just enter the URL into the search bar and it will pull up the article and it will show you the last date that it was crawled. And that will tell you whether it's been crawled since you updated it. And if it has, then you should start seeing changes. And if it hasn't, then you know, oh, I gotta wait a little. And then the last thing to do is just make a note somewhere in your content calendar or wherever that you updated the article on this date and set yourself a reminder to do it again in 6 months or a year, because it will probably need it again. I think one thing people are probably going to wonder is, what do we do in a year when we've updated it so many times? There's nothing new to add. That is a really hard question, and there's no answer. I can't really tell you. I would recommend don't give it 150% on your first round. So, for example, Claude actually had a number of good ideas here that I could have used, but you'll notice I only chose 2 or 3. I could put them all in, but I don't want to, because I know in 6 months or a year, I'm probably going to want to update this article again. So I'm just going to hold off on that. And then, later on, maybe I'll make a note somewhere. Oh, next time you update this, add a section about, put a comment somewhere. But for now, I don't want to add 100% because I don't want to shortchange myself later. Okay, I'm going to wrap up there unless there's any other questions from the chat. I'll give you all just a minute to ask any questions. But just as a reminder before I go, my name is Liam Carnahan, inkwellcontent.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter if you're not already on there, because I always am sharing tips, advice, and free tools and resources. So make sure that you check that out. Thanks everybody for joining me for this workshop. And as always, if you have any questions about SEO, content marketing, upgrading content, or digital nomadism, anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My name is Liam. You can get me at liam@inkwellcontent.com, LinkedIn, on Twitter for now, but not for long. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful rest of your day. Be brave, be strong, be smart, and I will talk to you soon.